that's what they try to do, right? And they try to do all this, right, in order to make the Palestinians permanent in the areas that Israel's in. Then the film cameras come, right? The IDF comes to these Palestinians in their set of tents, and they say, "Oh, look, again they're uprooting them." And the Europeans say, "Hey, we gave those people money. You're destroying what we gave them money for. How could you do this?" You know? Okay, very nice, right? So that's what happens. So that is the truth of what happens. It's very, very rare. The Palestinian village has been up for years. All of a sudden is taken down out of nowhere because the IDF decided they're going to move over. It would be completely nonsensical for the IDF to do something like that. It doesn't make any sense even just from a financial standpoint. It doesn't make any sense for the IDF to do that, right? Because that doesn't Well, how would that make any sense? You know, like why move to an area where there's a village? You have to destroy the whole village when there's like the entire area is open here. You know, that would make no sense whatsoever. But people, when it comes to to Judea and Samaria and to the West Bank, people don't ask questions about what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. You know, they just like believing narratives that sometimes, unfortunately, make Israel look pretty bad.
So that village, it's new. It's not something that's been there for very long.
Exactly.
Or was there? Okay.
Right. Aviva is here now, so I'm going to let her in. Everybody ready? Please don't shut your cameras off. Please keep your mics off until you are ready to speak. Here we go, folks. It's go time. Hello, welcome, Aviva.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Aviva. I'm a legislative aide for Congressman Ted Deutsch. I also work for him on the subcommittee staff as the staff associate for the Middle East, North Africa Global Counterterrorism Subcommittee. Thanks for having me at this awesome gathering.
Thank you very, very much for joining us. I am going to introduce one of our star students who would like to start and talk to you, and I'm going to introduce Jordan. Jordan, go ahead. If it's okay, Aviva, can I spotlight you and our speaker?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Great.
Talk.
And Jordan, go ahead.
All right. Shalom. We would like to thank you for taking the time to meet with us and hear what we have to say about furthering the U.S.-Israel relationship. We really appreciate your work concerning foreign affairs and hope you will continue to support a strong relationship with Israel. I'd like to introduce my friends Hodaya, Rafi, and Rebecca, who have some issues and topics to discuss regarding Iran, the International Crime Court, and cybersecurity. Thank you again for coming to hear what we have to say. Now, if I may direct your attention to Rafi.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for speaking to us today. We really appreciate this opportunity. Over the last few months, Israel and the US have been at the receiving end of potentially devastating attacks. Iran has attempted to raise the level of chlorine in Israel's water supply, which could be very dangerous and potentially fatal. And just last month in Florida, this occurred. A cyber attack occurred on one of your water treatment plants, which is a very similar kind of attack. This isn't to mention the massive cyber attack that attacked the Treasury and Commerce departments a few months ago in the US. We know in the previous congressional session that Congressman Deutsch introduced the U.S.-Israel Comprehension Enhancement and Regional Security Act, which included cybersecurity cooperation and the establishment of a grant program to support cybersecurity research. And we know it passed the House, but not the Senate before the end of the session. We'd like to know that if the congressman is to resubmit this bill in the session, that before he does, someone on his staff or the Foreign Affairs Committee study the effects of these recent attacks and look into whether the provision should be changed to further the joint efforts of the United States and Israel to combat further cyber attacks against each country. Thank you so much. And I think with that, it's to Hodaya.
Hi, thank you for coming on. We recently, in the International Criminal Court, made a politically motivated decision claiming it has authority to investigate Israel for alleged war crimes. This continuing its longstanding bias against Israel, even though Israel isn't even part of the ICC. I wanted to know Congressman Deutsch's position on this issue. And does Congressman Deutsch support the efforts of the previous administration, Executive Order 13928, sanctioning ICC officials engaging in such efforts against the U.S. and Israel? Also, does Congressman Deutsch support taking real action such as withholding funds to the Palestinians to hold the Palestinians accountable for initiating and supporting the ICC's illegitimate efforts against Israel in violation of their existing agreements with Israel? Thank you. I'd like to pass it on to my friend Rebecca.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. I would like to talk a little bit about Iran, its dangers, and what we hope can be done about it. There are some improvements which we hope that the Biden administration will implement into a new Iran deal and take away from the old one. The Iran deal under the Obama administration was largely inefficient as it did not address many of the crucial threats which Iran poses. Iran continued to fund terrorism with the money flowing into the country since sanctions have been widely removed. It is crucial that we monitor how much money is flowing into Iran and the things that they are using it for. Secondly, Iran's manufacturing of ballistic missiles went unnoticed under the Iran deal. Ballistic missiles are not only a threat to Israel, but they put America in danger as well. If Americans have been ignoring Iran up until now, this is a time to focus on this large issue. Inspections must actually be enforced to ensure that centrifuges are not enriching uranium to dangerous levels. Lastly, it is ignorant to have a statement in the deal, such as the sunset provisions, which let Iran go after a certain amount of years. The country is a danger, and this is not something which can go unnoticed. Now, I'd like to hand it over to my friend Ariana.
So firstly, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us and answer our questions. And this time it's very hard to, get human interaction, at least if it's on Zoom. And sometimes we lose our inspiration and lose our motivation at times like this. And you coming to speak to us, I think truly inspires us and motivates us to continue on our journey of political advocacy. I'm really excited to hear your answers to Rebecca's question, which touched on a very important topic of the Iran deal. And she discussed the possible changes and possible amendments that could be made to not only protect the US, but to also protect Israel. And this is extremely important to keep our people safe. And honestly, no one should be dying in this conflict. And these amendments would be the next step to preventing that. And then we heard Hodaya. She asked and explained our many concerns regarding the ICC and its recent actions against the US and Israel. And Rafi then talked about something we see very common today, cybersecurity, and the security cooperation that's relating to this, especially towards Israel. All of these are really great questions, and they're all questions that we are really looking forward to hearing the answer to. And all of these questions are topics we truly do care about. And on behalf of NCSY IPA, I want to thank you so much for what you do and for taking the time to listen to us and to answer us and to inspire us. And I can't wait to hear your answers. And I hope one day we'll obviously all get to meet face to face. Thank you very much. We really look forward to hearing this.
Yeah, Bezrat Hashem, next time all in person. No, thank you all. I mean, it's really wonderful. I love having meetings with student advocates. I think it's one of the more fun, exciting, interesting parts of my job is, being able to talk to the next generation of political advocates. And, you guys are always have great questions, are always super engaged. And so it is my pleasure to be here with you today and hopefully answer some of your questions. I think one of the things, like right off the bat, as you all know, and you've, I'm sure, clearly done your research on issues of importance to our subcommittee and to my boss, Congressman Ted Deutsch. You all know that he has always been, throughout his time, 11 years now, I believe, in Congress, as well as before he even served in Congress, has been a huge supporter of the U.S.-Israel relationship and an advocate for the U.S.-Israel relationship, to expanding partnerships with Israel on a number of issues, as you mentioned, right? Our bill from last Congress, HR 1837, that Congressman Deutsch introduced, and that he championed through passage of the House. It's something that means a great deal to him as a member of Congress to be able to use his position to make sure that not only does the United States continue to support military aid to Israel, continue to support Israel's qualitative military edge and ability to defend itself, against specifically, as you guys alluded to, the hostile regime of Iran in the area, but also that the U.S.-Israel partnership and the international community's partnerships with Israel, expand beyond just military aid, right? That we work with Israel on a number of platforms and utilize the amazing research, cutting edge research going on in Israel in a number of fields, and are able to work with the international community to normalize relations with Israel across all spheres, and to bolster to bolster Israel and global relationships with Israel. And so I think I think was that the first question on 1837. In looking at looking at cybersecurity in particular, that's something that the other subcommittee that Congressman Deutsch sits on the Foreign Affairs Committee is Europe, Eurasia, cybersecurity, and the environment. They changed the names recently, but one of the main focuses of that subcommittee is cyber. And so it's something that Congressman Deutsch cares very deeply about and is engaged with his colleague, Representative Bill Keating, on those issues. And so certainly that will be something that they're examining, in the coming weeks as we look at which bills are coming back up for introduction, and how we continue to champion these partnerships with Israel. Cybersecurity is something that is at the forefront of a lot of members' minds, specifically, my boss and others who sit on that subcommittee, on the Europe subcommittee. And so definitely want to reassure you that it is top of mind, and that, protecting, we have a lot to learn from each other, right? Part of the reason for these partnerships is that the US and Israel have a lot to work on together, a lot to collaborate on, a lot to learn from one another. And so certainly, cyber is, one of those areas where we could always stand to benefit from more mutually benefit from one collaboration. And then let's see, I guess let's transition into multilateral fora, right? So if we're looking, I think one of the things that Congressman Deutsch cares very deeply about, especially right now, given the transition of administration, is building up, American diplomacy, rebuilding our alliances with our within the international community, and also, as always, right, whether it's the UN, whether it's the ICC, making sure to that the US is a strong advocate for the state of Israel, and making sure that we are calling out any unwarranted or any instances where Israel, that we feel Israel is being unfairly singled out. I think one of the things to keep in mind in general is just that that Congressman Deutsch, as well as his colleagues, in their discussions with diplomats, with foreign leaders, is constantly advocating for the state of Israel, constantly advocating to support the state of Israel in a number of different fora, and is working on ensuring that the global community, in the same way that the US has this kind of mutually beneficial relationship with Israel, that we're building those relationships and bolstering those partnerships in all of our allies. That said, the Congressman Deutsch does not support the former administration's decision to withhold aid to the Palestinians. That is something that the congressman feels actually moves us further away from peace, further away from a two-state solution with two nations living side by side in peace and security. And so, that is not something that the congressman actually has worked very hard on legislation and congressional efforts to restore aid to the Palestinians and ensure that we are able to move the region further toward stability, further toward peace, and return parties to direct negotiations. He does not feel that withholding necessary assistance is something that is a useful or humane and humanitarian bargaining chip to use in any multilateral discussion, regardless of I guess, regardless of how strongly we might feel about an outcome. And so that's not necessarily something that the congressman supports as a bargaining chip, but it is something that he feels that by restoring aid to the Palestinians, it actually is moving the region further toward peace, further towards security, and ensuring that that in all of his discussions with foreign leaders, foreign diplomats, that that Israel is being addressed and supported, is a way toward increasing normalization in the international community with the state of Israel.
Before, can I just ask one point of clarification? That I
Sure,
think that
sure.
some of our students, when you say restoring aid to the Palestinians, do you mean to the Palestinian people or to the Palestinian Authority?
Great question. Great point of clarification. Well, to the Palestinian people, and
NGOs
I
and charities.
personally, sorry.
Like NGOs and charities.
Well, and I'll clarify this by saying I am not the primary authority on the Israel portfolio in our office. And so my expertise is fairly limited when it comes to the direct mechanisms of assistance to the region. And so I'm happy to follow up with additional resources for your class on how that assistance is being handled, which authorities it's flowing to, and what the congressman, which vehicles the congressman supports. But I don't want to make any assumptions that I don't have the expertise to back up, if that makes sense.
Got it.
Sure. And then I think we had questions as well about remind me about what was the third question that we had?
Rebecca, you could go ahead.
Like changes to a new Iran deal.
Great. Yes. So I think the congressman is excited to work with the Biden administration on any further diplomatic solution with Iran. As I'm sure you guys all know from your research, it's not a secret that the congressman was not, did not support the Iran deal, the JCPOA, when it was originally introduced and being negotiated, and had strong opinions about what could be improved in that deal. However, he also did not support the decision to impulsively withdraw from it without a plan and steps toward without a thought out plan on how best to proceed, and work with our allies in the international community. And so I think the congressman supports what the Biden administration has said so far about, not giving up any of our leverage in the discussion before returning to negotiations, right? So we have a tremendous amount of leverage right now that we can use in these discussions. There are ways that we can approach, the deal in order to expand and improve the deal, given the leverage that we do have. And so the congressman has definitely supports what the Biden administration has said so far as its plan toward negotiation, and hoping to get out of it, either a plan for future agreements, or an expanded version of the current agreement, and certainly is not in favor of, abandoning all the leverage that we have now, and wants to work with our allies in the international community to make sure that whatever deal we have moving forward is a deal that is comprehensive, and provides for that he is ready to support right off the bat. And then we had one more question, I think.
Did anybody have questions that weren't answered? Now's your chance. Okay, Aviva, do you mind if anybody has any questions before we let you go? If anybody,
Yeah, no, of course.
Okay. If anybody wants, then now's your chance to be able to ask a question. So go ahead, feel free. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be shy. Aviva's a really nice person.
Yeah, I try.
Okay, Rebecca's got a question. Rebecca, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. I was just wondering how you got this position where you are right now.
Sure. So I actually started out as an intern in Congressman Deutsch's office. And so I when I left college, my main area of expertise actually wasn't originally foreign affairs. I, like a lot of you, was very involved in Jewish organizations growing up, had been to Israel, spoke Hebrew fairly fluently, but otherwise had, kind of looked at other areas of policy more so than foreign affairs. But I ended up as an intern in Congressman Deutsch's office, working a lot on these issues. And our lead foreign affairs staffer kind of, took a liking to me and brought me on board when Congressman Deutsch was slated to become the chairman of this subcommittee. So, I started working for the subcommittee, right off that internship, and I've been with the subcommittee and with his office ever since. And now I also I work for both the Committee on Foreign Affairs as well as Congressman Deutsch's personal DC office. And so my portfolio for Congressman Deutsch mostly focuses now on global health, global human rights, women, LGBTQ and children's issues. I work the Europe portfolio for him as well, and a couple of other issue areas. But yeah, so that's how I ended up where I am now. I think he's an amazing boss to work for. So when I found out that I was going to be offered this job, it was definitely a no-brainer. Was very exciting.
Okay. Aviva, thank you. Unless if anybody has a question, it's hard to see if anybody's hands are up, so you can just talk. But if not, then we're going to say, Aviva, thank you so very much for joining us. We really do appreciate your time. We know how busy you are, and thank you so very much. And we do look forward to getting back to. Oh, wait, sorry, Carol has a question. Carol,
Sure.
We're almost there. Almost let you go there.
No problem at all. I'm happy to answer questions.
First, I really do want to thank you so much for coming and speaking with us. This has been really, really amazing. I just wanted to know what you think we should look out for of what maybe you or Representative Deutsch will be doing in future weeks or months regarding the U.S.-Israel relationship.
Amazing. That's a great question. And I think that's something, I love that you already are all so engaged in these political conversations and looking out for these issues on the world stage. I think Congressman Deutsch, obviously we just started a new Congress. And so we are working with the committee to get our committee business up and running. And I know that, to circle back to the Palestinian assistance conversation that we were having, and, again, I'm happy to provide further materials on that to you guys for anyone who's interested in following up. But that is one of the top priorities for Congressman Deutsch and for our subcommittee in the new Congress. And so I know that if you look at the Foreign Affairs Committee website, you'll be able to keep track of what hearings and briefings and other kind of committee business we have going on. And so when there are hearings, on the issues that you guys have raised and that you're specifically interested in, you should definitely, follow along with these hearings. They're publicly viewable, live streamed on YouTube. So you can certainly, watch them whenever you want. And it's a really great way to learn about, a hearing is really a forum for members of Congress to learn about the issues that they're legislating on, right? Because, much like, much like me, right? There are things that I'm not an expert in. Some of our members of Congress, there are issues that they want to learn more about as well. So you're really watching the legislative process happen, right? You're watching them take in the information that they will need when they start, in introducing legislation on specific issues. So, definitely keep an eye on what hearings we have going on and briefings, and keep doing what you're doing. Keep on top of the news. You can always, call your members of Congress and, talk about whatever issues, are happening on the day to day. I know that there will definitely be, discussions on our subcommittee and also, that Congressman Deutsch will be having with the administration on Iran, on the JCPOA. We're looking at all of those, all of these issues that you're raising as these urgent priorities are things that we're going to be addressing, either in Congressman Deutsch's, letters to and discussions with the administration or in publicly available committee hearings. So, definitely feel free to keep an eye on that and to, always, follow along with what's happening. I know we'll also be seeing as we were talking about earlier with the with HR 1837, we'll be starting to reintroduce legislation that's really important, updated for the new Congress, that hopefully we'll be able to end up passing into law, right? And really getting some of these priorities ingrained in U.S. policy. So, when there's specific legislation, when there's a new bill number, when you notice that, that bill is reintroduced, like, call your members of Congress, make sure that they're supporting that bill, that legislation. So, I think, yeah, it's a great question. There's always more ways to be involved, and keeping tabs on congress.gov is the place to go if you're trying to track legislation. So, feel free to keep an eye on what bills are being reintroduced or what bills you think should be reintroduced, and keep pushing for those to happen.
Okay. Last chance, anybody else?
Yeah, could I ask a question?
Of course.
I thank you for speaking to us. It means a lot. Correct me if I'm wrong, but earlier you're talking about how you guys want to help the Palestinians in order to create peace, right, between us and between the Israelis and the Palestinians, no?
Sure, that assistance for the Palestinians and ensuring that the Palestinian people have the humanitarian assistance they need as a vehicle toward peace and security. Yeah.
So what peace do you like? What's your ideal view of peace? Because peace is a word that's been going around here for decades, and so far it hasn't reached a tangible outcome. So what's your ideal peace?
Yeah. Well, if I could answer that, then I'd be the leading expert on the Middle East region. So it's a great question, and I like your name. I think that
thank you.
I think that when in talking to I think one thing to know, for you guys to know about Congressman Deutsch, is that he is not only extremely engaged on these issues, a lot of members are, but he is very, very thoughtful. He's someone who asks really really deep questions about these issues. It's something that he's thought about for many years, and he certainly doesn't claim to have all of the answers either, but he's someone who isn't afraid to ask big questions and to listen to a lot of different perspectives. And his perception, I guess, of security in the region is a two-state solution, right? With two states living side by side in peace and security, right? Where there is a solution that will mutually benefit both the Israelis and the Palestinians, and will enable Israel to maintain its, security, because, Israel's national security is a top priority for the US and is a top priority, as Israel's, closest international ally. But that also respects the Palestinian right for self-determination, right? And so obviously, if he knew all of the magic answers, or if I knew all the magic answers for how to achieve it, then, we'd win all the Nobel Prizes. And obviously it's a very complicated issue, as you're realizing. And I want you to know that our members of Congress see it that way too. And I know that the word peace, or, concept even of a two-state solution, gets thrown around a lot as these kind of buzzwords, right? And you're right to point that out. But what I want you to know about my boss, and what I've learned from working from him, is that he doesn't shy away from the difficult questions of, okay, well, what's the next step of that, right? And he's someone who's constantly working to understand the situation better and to better, lead the way in terms of congressional solutions to some of these issues, and to work with his colleagues to be of maximal help to whichever administration, regardless of political party, to champion any effort that he thinks furthers those goals and moves us closer to peace and security. And that's something that he'll continue to do now. So I don't know if that, I don't know if there is a perfect answer to your question. Hopefully that is I think that's as good as I can do, but hopefully that addresses some of what you were asking.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Aviva, thank you so very much. We really appreciate it, and we wish you best of success.
You as well. Thank you all, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. You guys did amazing. That was great. As usual, you guys really like just hit it out of the park. That was really a great job, and really all of you, especially the speakers, did a really great job. And the people that asked questions, Carol and Aviv, and you guys asked questions at the end. That was excellent. Rebecca, good question off the cuff there as well. I'm really proud of you guys. That's no other word to say it. Really proud of you guys. I just want to clarify what with the question that I asked, because she said that Congressman Deutsch is interested in giving money back, aid back to the Palestinians. There are 4 congressional laws that would prohibit him or Joe Biden or the American government from giving money back to the Palestinians, to the Palestinian Authority. There is no way that that's what he wants to do. That is impossible. What he wants to do is be able to give money to charities in the Palestinian Authority. I'll give you one example of it. The example that I always bring up, there's a hospital on Mount Scopus by Hebrew University. It's not Hebrew University's hospital. It's a different one called Augustus Victoria, which services cancer patients that for the Palestinian Authority, and gives them chemo. The American government used to fund them with $25 million a year, and President Trump cut that aid off. That's the aid that Congressman Deutsch wants to restore, that President Biden wants to restore, and Congressman Deutsch himself actually took about 10 members of Congress to that hospital to show them the effects of what happens when America cuts off aid to those types of places. So he's not interested in giving aid to the Palestinian Authority. That's not what he's looking to do. What he's looking to do is give aid to NGOs, which is, again, not for now. We can discuss it in our next session, what we're trying to do. Okay, I just want to give, before we end off, does anyone have any questions before we end? Anything you heard that you wanted to ask about or anything? Okay.
It's not really a question. It's more of a statement. That was, I'm surprised she's not a congressperson, because all of her answers were very politician-y. Like they didn't seem to be
literally her job.
Yeah.
Right. I'm saying that's actually her job. Her job is literally to speak to groups and give political answers and politically correct answers that doesn't get her boss in trouble. That's so, like you can't say, you know, when speaking to politicians, be like, well, they're so political. Yeah, it's exactly what they are. And if they weren't doing that, they wouldn't be doing their job. And she said, you know, she was like giving her own personal opinions and like spouting off. So then that's how you get fired. So, yeah. So that being said, I'll just tell you the next thing that we're going to try to get done is I wrote today. I don't know if we'll have an answer. I don't know if the answer will be yes, but I'm trying to get Congressman Brian Mast himself, not a staff member, to speak to us. And that at that session, I'd like to get, I know it's going to sound insane, but I want to get about 100 teens in on that session because he's so big, and so inspirational. So I really want to get, if we can get him, I want to get 100 teens. We're going to need to work very hard on that, but I think it's doable. And that's the story. Okay. Everybody have a happy Purim. We'll be on next week, Billy Nether, and I hope to see you guys. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.